Imagine you have trained your entire life for the C-suite.
Right.
You know, you've done all the networking, you've mastered all the corporate jargon, and you have just ruthlessly climbed the ladder.
You've put in the work.
Exactly.
Yep.
And so you step into the boardroom on day one, right? You adjust your tailored suit, you sit down at this massive mahogany table, and within exactly 30 seconds, a plush doll walks over and just throws you out the window.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, your career is just, it's over before you even opened your laptop.
Yeah.
So today, we are looking at the most chaotic corporate takeover in history.
I mean, it really is.
But the thing is, it didn't take place on Wall Street.
Yeah.
It actually took place on a mattress.
Which is, I mean, it's just a phenomenal framework for what we are about to analyze in this deep dive.
It really is.
Because when you strip away the velvet and the stuffing, the psychological warfare we are looking at in these source materials, it rivals anything you would see in an actual, hostile corporate merger.
Well, absolutely. So to give you, the listener, some context on what we're working with here, we're holding a stack of these incredibly bizarre, entirely unpolished broadcast transcripts.
Right, from the Speak the Show and Break to 732 networks.
Yeah, exactly. And we are plunging headfirst into the spring 2732 season of Fight Wrestling.
Which, for those of you tracking our timeline at home, that corresponds roughly to April and May of 2026.
Right. But time and space, they operate a little differently in this universe.
To say the least.
Yeah. I mean, the scale of this drama is simultaneously incredibly small. Like, the ring is literally a bedroom bed, and yet it's cosmically massive.
Because of the characters involved.
Exactly. We have this roster featuring a barista hiding a dark secret, an actual alien, an entity known only as the Witch, and, well, a pink penguin.
Which is exactly why we have to approach these transcripts with absolute academic rigor.
I couldn't agree more.
The aesthetics, sure, they are plush and surreal, but the mechanics of power here are dead serious. The behavior of these competitors, I mean, their alliance building, their betrayals, their complete psychological breakdowns, it provides this terrifyingly accurate mirror for human institutional ambition.
Okay, let's unpack this ambition then. Because before we even talk about the individual competitors, we really need to understand the governance structure of fight wrestling.
Yes, the architecture of power.
Right. The transcripts reveal two major seats of power that are up for grabs during this specific weekend. You have the Metal Admin title and the Metal Co-host title.
And the division of labor between those two is critical to understand.
How so?
Well, the Metal Admin is decided by a bracketed one-on-one tournament. Think of the admin as, the chief operating officer.
Like the CEO.
Right. They hold the gavel, they control the operational logistics of the entire promotion.
Got it.
But the Metal Co-host, which is decided by this massive 20-person battle royale, that is the visionary role.
Ah, so they're the CEO.
Exactly. The co-host is the public-facing CEO. They control the narrative direction of the podcast and the promotion itself.
And the rules for that battle royale, I mean, that's where the corporate analogies become incredibly literal.
They really do.
Yeah, because the broadcaster on these transcripts is practically hyperventilating as they explain the elimination criteria. It's not about pinning someone to a mat.
No, it's about a physical boundary.
Red line.
Right, the perimeter of the mattress. Rule 1 is simply survival within that space. 20 participants enter, drawn from all these distinct political factions.
And rule 2?
Elimination. To remove a competitor from the match, and therefore, from the running for co-host, you must physically force them over the red line at the edge of the bed and down to the floor.
It is a literal drop-off. And, I have heard people use the term glass cliff to describe this, but I want to be really precise here.
Please do.
In the corporate world, a glass cliff is when a company is already failing, right? And they put a woman or a minority in the leadership role so they can take the fall when the inevitable crash happens.
Right, it's a setup.
Exactly. But this bed ring is not a glass cliff. It is an absolute vacuum.
Oh, that's a great point.
Because once you cross that duvet cover, you just cease to exist in the political hierarchy. You're voided.
I completely agree with that distinction. It is a binary state of existence. You are either in the market or you are bankrupt.
Totally bankrupt.
However, the governance structure of fight wrestling actually has a built-in fail-safe that prevents a total monopoly.
Wait, really? What kind of failsafe?
Well, the winner of the Battle Royale becomes the medal co-host, right? But the top 5 runner-ups, so the competitors who make it to the final 6 but fail to secure the ultimate victory, they are awarded a secondary path to power.
Oh, I see where you're going with this.
Yeah, they secure a spot in the Fight Wrestling Elimination Treasure Hunter.
Okay, I need you to break down the mechanics of this treasure hunter concept for us, because reading the transcripts, they treat it like some sort of mythical artifact.
They do, yeah.
What physically is it, and how does it function as this safety net you mentioned?
Based on the historical context within the promotion, the Elimination Treasure Hunter is represented as a physical briefcase or a contract.
Okay.
And if you secure it, you hold a legally binding anytime, anywhere guarantee to challenge for the primary titles.
Oh, wow. So tying it back to our corporate analogy.
Right. If surviving the Battle Royale makes you the CEO, surviving into the final 6 and securing that treasure hunter contract is the equivalent of being granted a massive block of voting shares.
That is wild. So you might not sit in the big chair today, but you have the institutional leverage to execute a hostile takeover later.
Exactly. The moment the current CEO shows weakness, you cash in.
So it actively incentivizes the losers to stalk the winners.
It institutionalizes paranoia.
Man, you never actually win. You just delay your own overthrow.
Precisely.
And the factions fighting for this power, they were deeply entrenched. The transcripts outline this rigid class system within the locker room.
You have the standard memberships, which seem to represent the working class of the promotion.
Right, competitors like Lion and Dino.
Yeah. They generally adhere to the basic social contract of the sport. But hovering above them, exerting just a massive amount of downward pressure, is the faction known as the Members' Evil.
The corporate raiders.
Exactly. The Members' Evil operate with a level of coordinated malice that the rank-and-file memberships just cannot match.
They don't just want to win matches.
No, they want to break the psychological will of the locker room.
But the promotions management, they throw a massive variable into this entrenched class warfare, don't they?
Oh, huge one.
Because the broadcast spends hours hyping the arrival of the outside memberships.
All right, 9 complete unknowns.
Brought in on the eve of the Battle Royale just to completely destabilize the ecosystem.
It's a brilliant managerial move, really.
And we are going to dig deep into who these outsiders are because their lore is genuinely mind-bending. But first, I think we have to look at the Friday night showdown.
The Metal Admin Finals.
Yes, because before the co-host is crowned, the operations side of the business has to be settled.
And this is where the structural integrity of the Members' Evil faction is really tested.
Right, because they've successfully crushed the regular memberships to secure both spots in the final.
Exactly. But now they face the ultimate crisis of an aggressive expansionist strategy, which is cannibalization.
It is Wendy versus Nightmare for the admin title.
The battle for COO.
And the contrast between these two is just staggering. I mean, the transcripts provide these long, poetic character descriptions as they make their entrances. Let's look at Nightmare first.
He is the overt threat.
Oh, totally. The text says he rides a horse of shadows black as night, and that the moon trembles in fright when he appears.
It's very dramatic, right?
He has steel on his back and fire in his eyes. This is your classic scorched earth corporate litigator.
He wants you to see the lawsuit coming so you capitulate before the trial even begins.
Exactly. Nightmare uses intimidation as his primary currency.
But his opponent, his own faction mate Wendy, operates on a completely different psychological wavelength.
Completely different.
The poetry for Wendy's entrance describes her working a counter in a sunshine yellow apron.
A sunshine yellow apron.
Right. She hums a little tune and asks about your day with sweet smiles and blue eyes.
So she is a barista, a literal plush barista.
On the surface, yes. But the text explicitly states that she pours the coffee black as night and, most importantly, has a secret locked away.
Is secret?
Yes. The broadcasters on the transcript are practically begging for answers, speculating that she is like a deep cover spy or a superhero operating off the grid.
Wow.
So what we are witnessing is the strategic weaponization of the unassuming facade.
That's a great way to phrase it.
Nightmare wears his aggression like armor, right? But Wendy uses her sunshine yellow apron as camouflage for absolute brutality.
Okay, I have to challenge that framing, though.
Go for it.
You call it the strategic weaponization of an unassuming facade, but isn't she just, sandbagging? Well, in a real corporate environment, if an executive hides their extreme competence and ruthlessness behind this sweet, accommodating persona, That is deeply deceptive.
That's true.
It destroys trust. I mean, Nightmare's terrifying, sure, but at least he is honest about what he is.
He broadcasts his intentions.
Exactly. So does Wendy actually deserve the admin title, or is she just a sociopath in a yellow apron manipulating the optics?
That is a highly perceptive read on the ethics of her character, but we have to look at the environment she operates in.
Okay.
In fight wrestling, transparency is a liability.
Right.
Nightmare's honesty allows opponents to calculate his vector of attack. Wendy's deception removes the opponent's ability to calculate risk.
That makes a lot of sense.
And we see the effectiveness of this in the match itself. Because it is a no disqualification match, Nightmare takes full advantage of his overt aggression.
Oh, he really does.
He introduces a weapon. The transcripts detail him physically lifting Wendy and slamming her violently into a structural wall.
And the announcers are literally counting her out. They assume the barista is completely wrecked.
It looks like a decisive victory.
So explain the physics of this to me. In a scenario where this massive steel-wearing shadow rider uses a weapon to destroy an unassuming barista, how does she physically and psychologically endure that?
Well, it comes down to the structural integrity implied by her locked-away secret.
Okay, unpack that.
Nightmare calculated Wendy's threshold for trauma based on the yellow apron. He applied the exact amount of force necessary to break a barista.
Right.
But her underlying lore, that spy or superhero protocol we talked about, means she possesses an unquantifiable capacity for kinetic absorption.
Oh, wow, so she just takes it.
She doesn't fight the impact. She absorbs it, allows the referee's count to create a false sense of security for Nightmare, and basically just waits for him to overextend.
Which is exactly what happens. Nightmare, thinking she is broken, goes for this sloppy submission hold.
And Wendy reverses it.
Yeah, the broadcast transcript here just descends into pure, unfiltered screaming.
It's chaotic.
Wendy locks in something the announcers called the C3 lock-in. Nightmare is trapped. The time limit is running out, and Wendy forces the Shadow Rider to tap out.
It's an incredible reversal.
But what physically is the C3 lock-in? How does someone in an apron submit a knight?
While the exact biomechanics are left slightly ambiguous in the raw text, the context clues point to a leverage-based joint manipulation.
Okay.
C3 likely refers to the third cervical vertebra.
Oh, brutal.
Exactly. Wendy isn't overpowering Nightmare's arms or legs. She is isolating the most vulnerable point of his structural column.
That is terrifying.
He uses her apron, perhaps literally wrapping the heavy-duty canvas strings around his posture to create a fulcrum.
Wow.
It is the physical embodiment of freezing a hostile raider's liquid assets. You don't have to be bigger than them if you cut off their access to oxygen and leverage.
That is brilliant and horrifying. She essentially strangles his operational capacity while smiling at him. So Wendy secures the tap-out, and she is crowned the metal admin. The members' evil faction retains control of the operational logistics, but Wendy has proven that their true power lies not in overt terror, but in hidden, calculated strangulation.
However, operational control is only half the battle.
Right.
Wendy dictates the logistics, but as we move towards Sunday's 20-person battle royale, the focus shifts entirely to who will control the narrative.
Who will become the metal co-host.
Right. And the transcripts reveal that the narrative is currently entirely paralyzed by a singular toxic entity.
We really have to talk about this vacuum of power and how it gets filled by paranoia. Because Friday night concludes with Wendy at the top, but the locker room isn't talking about her at all.
Not even a little bit.
No, they are obsessed with a character known only as the Witch. Public enemy number one.
The Witch operates outside the traditional hierarchy of physical dominance.
How so?
The lore provided in the source text paints a very specific picture of psychological warfare. The lyrics describe the Witch as having a crooked grin, carrying a silver blade, and dancing barefoot on ash.
That is such a vivid image.
It is. Furthermore, the Witch stirs the moon in a blackened sky.
A silver blade and dancing on ash. You know, I read the ash as the literal remnants of burned bridges.
Oh, that's an excellent interpretation.
Yeah, because the Witch does not build alliances. The Witch incinerates them and then dances on the remains.
Exactly.
I actually compare the Witch to a very specific type of middle manager. You know the one.
I think we all do.
The person who hoards vital information, whispers contradictory rumors to different departments, and ensures that everyone is so terrified of being fired that they never actually collaborate to solve the company's problems.
That is exactly the mechanism of control we see in the pre-show transcripts.
Really? Tell me about that.
During the Speak the Show broadcast segments, before the physical match even begins, the witch is orchestrating backstage sabotage. The transcripts detail the witch interrupting an interview to actively attack Creepy Ghost. Not to win a title, but simply to establish dominance through unpredictable violence.
And it isn't just physical attacks either.
No, not at all.
The transcripts note the witch pulling characters like Dino aside, whispering in the shadows, trying to force these deeply uncomfortable, toxic alliances.
The psychological toll this takes on the locker room is just staggering.
I can imagine.
The backstage promos are entirely focused on the witch. The unifying catchphrase of the weekend actually becomes, "No more witch."
No more witch.
Yes. You have competitors from rival factions begging each other to form a truce solely to prevent the witch from gaining the co-host power.
But see, here's where it gets really interesting, and this is where the strategy of the locker room feels fundamentally flawed to me.
How do you mean?
Well, by making their entire identity, we have to stop the witch. They hand the witch all the narrative power.
Oh, that is a fantastic point.
Right. The Battle Royale ceases to be a 20-person free-for-all where everyone wants to be CEO. It becomes 19 people trying to execute a designated target while the target tries to make them turn on each other.
It completely shifts the dynamic.
It is classic reality TV villain dynamics.
Yeah.
The villain knows they aren't there to make friends. They're there for screen time. The witch is living in their heads rent-free.
You are identifying the core vulnerability of the established roster here. Their strategy relies entirely on shared history and shared trauma.
Yes.
They're reacting to past grievances. Which brings us to the most brilliant tactical maneuver by the promotions management.
Introducing the wildcards.
Exactly. How do you disrupt a system paralyzed by historical trauma? You introduce entities that have absolutely no history to manipulate.
The outside memberships. 9 complete unknowns dropped into the ecosystem hours before the bell rings.
And the poetic descriptions of these characters in the transcripts are just a surreal departure from the standard wrestling tropes.
Oh, they are completely wild.
The outside memberships act as agents of pure chaos, and their individual lore really hints at why they are immune to the witch's psychological warfare.
Let's look at the clowns first, because the text introduces Sun Clown and Moon Clown.
Right.
Sun Clown has fascinated me. The transcript describes him as holding a coffee in a paper cup with a pocket full of ticket studs.
Very specific imagery.
Yeah, and it says he is juggling pain, making a day out of letdown, and turning every little breakdown into something we can laugh about.
It's a very tragic profile.
It is. He sounds like the ultimate working-class hero, but one who has internalized the abuse of the corporate structure and decided to market it as entertainment.
I think Sun Clown represents the tragic optimist. He is immune to the witch's fear tactics because his entire existence is already defined by pain and letdown.
That makes total sense.
You cannot threaten a man who has monetized his own breakdown.
Yeah, that's dark but true. And then there's Moon Clown.
Conversely, Moon Clown is described as falling through the room, representing the darker, inevitable collapse of the performance. They are essentially 2 sides of the emotional labor required in high-stress environments.
That is such a deep read. And then you have the alien.
Yes.
The overarching lore for the alien is a single existential question. Am I a stranger here?
Which is profound in this context. The alien is entirely disconnected from the locker room politics.
Totally unbothered.
The alien does not care that Wendy is the admin or that the members evil are dominant. The alien has 0 context for the witch's reign of terror.
Right.
The alien operates on an entirely different frequency, making them a completely unreadable opponent.
I love that. The roster is so deeply obsessed with their own internal drama, and this alien just wanders in, looks at the plush bed and the corporate maneuvering, and essentially asks, what is the point of any of this?
It's a complete paradigm shift.
It is incredible.
Yeah.
But we need to spend some serious time on the most mind-bending anomaly in this entire source document.
I know exactly who you're talking about.
I need you to explain the entrant known as Brain Elephant, because the mechanics of this character completely break the established rules of the universe.
Brain Elephant is the tactical nightmare of the Battle Royale. It introduces a concept that destroys the binary nature of the elimination rule.
Right, because the sources specifically note that Brain Elephant has 2 distinct lives, which are represented visually by a green helmet and a red helmet.
Yes, the dual helmets.
The announcer in the transcript literally screams, "We got second Brain Elephant," when the first one is eliminated. How is a competitor allowed to simply respawn?
Well, in terms of corporate governance, Brain Elephant represents built-in redundancy.
Redundancy.
Think of a massive tech conglomerate. If you shut down their primary server, they don't go out of business. They simply route the traffic to a secondary server farm.
Ah, okay.
Brain Elephant has compartmentalized its existence. You can eliminate the green helmet iteration, but the red helmet iteration activates immediately.
But wait, I want to argue that this is actually a massive disadvantage.
Really? How so?
You call it redundancy, but experiencing elimination is traumatic. You are physically hurled over the red line.
True.
If I am Brain Elephant, I have to experience the total failure and humiliation of being fired, only to instantly be rehired and thrown back into the exact same violent boardroom. It sounds like an endless loop of suffering.
That would be true if Brain Elephant processed trauma like the other competitors.
They don't.
Look at the text. The poetry explicitly states that Brain Elephant never forgets every little thing you caught and acts as a museum in my head.
A museum.
Brain Elephant isn't suffering. Brain Elephant is collecting data.
Oh, wow.
The first iteration, the green helmet, is essentially a probe. It engages with you, calculates your lifting strength, maps your favorite elimination angles, and lets you expend the massive physical and political capital required to throw it over the line.
Oh my God. So you burn all your energy eliminating the probe.
And then the red helmet iteration respawns, armed with a complete analytical breakdown of your weaknesses while you are physically depleted.
That is terrifying.
It is the ultimate panopticon of the battlefield.
It shits the entire balance of power. The existing roster is fighting this localized emotional war against the witch, while these outside memberships are running data collection probes and existential analyses.
The tension is at an absolute boiling point. The memberships are terrified, the members evil or arrogant, and the outsiders are utterly indifferent to the established lore.
And then the bell rings.
The 20-person battle royale begins.
And within 30 seconds, the entire philosophical weight of the promotion collapses onto a single competitor.
We really have to do a minute-by-minute breakdown of the incident with Mouse.
Yes, because this is the most shocking, abrupt dismantling of an ego I have ever read in my life.
Mouse is presented as an established, highly motivated competitor, someone who fully expected to be standing at the end of the match, perhaps even securing the co-host title, or at least a treasure hunter contract.
So the bell rings, bodies are flying everywhere, the broadcasters are just trying to keep up with the chaos, and in a mere 30 seconds, Mouse is eliminated.
It's incredibly fast.
Not in an epic duel. Not after a grueling 10-minute exchange of holds. Mouse is abruptly and almost accidentally shoved over the red line by a character named Doll.
The physical elimination is swift, yes, but the psychological collapse that follows is what really demands our attention.
Oh, absolutely.
The transcript jumps to the post-show, speak the show interview segment, and Mouse is in a state of incandescent, unmanageable rage.
The specific phrasing Mouse uses in the interview is brilliant. Mouse is pacing, refusing to look at the camera, screaming at the production staff, and repeatedly says, "I'm just really crashed out."
Crashed out. It is the perfect terminology for a total system failure.
It really is.
The dissonance between Mouse's internal narrative, the hero who conquers the bed ring, and the external reality of being discarded like trash in half a minute is just too vast for the psyche to process.
It is fragility of the top dog mindset. Imagine spending months visualizing your victory speech. You have completely bought into your own hype.
Right.
And then you trip on the red carpet on the way to the podium and shatter your jaw. The sheer embarrassment is paralyzing. And Mouse's explanation for what happened just makes it worse.
It really does. Mouse attempts to rationalize the failure in these frantic, broken sentences. Mouse claims to have been engaged in a highly technical struggle with Monkey, one of the new wildcards.
Right.
Mouse was completely focused on this high-level engagement.
But the reality is, while Mouse was hyper-focused on Monkey, Doll simply walked up behind Mouse and pushed.
Literally just a push.
Doll didn't even use a wrestling move. Doll treated Mouse like a piece of furniture that was in the way. It is the ultimate disrespect. Mouse was a tactical afterthought.
Which leads to the climax of this psychological meltdown.
The backstage incident.
Yes. While Mouse is stewing in the interview area demanding that the cameras be turned off, another competitor, Panda, inadvertently wanders into the frame.
And Panda had absolutely nothing to do with the match. Panda wasn't even involved in the elimination. Panda's just passing through the hallway.
But Mouse instantly weaponizes this intrusion.
It's so unfair.
Mouse unloads a barrage of hostility on Panda, screaming, "I don't care what you talk about," and demands that Panda leave.
And when Panda, who is clearly bewildered, asks, "What did I do?" Mouse escalates the verbal abuse into a physical altercation right there in the backstage area.
It is horizontal hostility perfectly captured.
Exactly. Mouse cannot punish Doll. Doll is still in the match, competing for the CEO spot. Mouse cannot punish the management. So Mouse punches sideways.
It's the only direction left to punch.
Mouse attacks the only person lower on the immediate totem pole, which is a confused Panda in the hallway. He shows how the pressure cooker environment of fight wrestling actively generates collateral damage. The system shatters your ego, and you bleed on whoever happens to be standing next to you.
It is a tragic and highly illustrative sequence. But while Mouse is backstage externalizing their humiliation on Panda, the actual battle royale is still raging.
The ring is a meat grinder at this point.
Competitors are being hurled over the duvet red line left and right. Brain Elephant's data collection fails to save its second iteration, and both helmets are eliminated. The wild cards are slowly neutralized.
Which brings us to the climax. The ring clears out until we hit the final 6.
This is a crucial threshold.
It is, because everyone left in the ring is now guaranteed, at minimum, a spot in the Elimination Treasure Hunter. They all have the golden parachute.
The final 6 are the wildcard alien, giraffe, moon clown, creepy ghost, the universally despised witch, and our ultimate protagonist, Ludwig the pink penguin.
And in this final sequence, the witch finally unleashes the physical manifestation of all that backstage psychological warfare.
The witch realizes that whispering in the shadows is no longer sufficient.
No, it's time for action.
The witch goes on an absolute tear, systematically dismantling and eliminating alien, giraffe, moon clown, and creepy ghost in rapid succession.
The dark magic is working. The locker room's nightmare is literally coming true.
The witch clears the board, leaving only 2 competitors standing on the mattress.
The master of paranoia and Ash versus an absolute anomaly of the roster, Ludwig the pink penguin.
This is the definitive clash of philosophies within the fight wrestling ecosystem. We have thoroughly established the witch's aesthetic: crooked grins, blackened skies, the manipulation of fear.
Right.
The witch represents toxic, authoritarian control.
Now contrast that with the transcript's description of Ludwig. I mean, Ludwig's entrance poem is a masterclass in joyful defiance.
It really stands out.
He is a plush penguin wearing a pink tuxedo. The lyrics say he is sliding on disco ice and stealing the show with pure flair.
Sliding on disco ice.
Right. He has a big brown heart and a small round float. The text rhetorically asks, who gave you moves? Who gave you flair?
Ludwig represents charismatic, inspirational energy.
Totally.
In our corporate framework, the witch is the manager who controls productivity by threatening to fire everyone and monitoring their keystrokes.
The worst kind of manager.
But Ludwig is the visionary leader who inspires extreme loyalty simply because their vision is so magnetic and joyful. Ludwig controls the room by turning on the disco lights.
Joy as an act of rebellion. And in these frantic final minutes, which the announcer is calling with an intensity that makes me genuinely fear for their vocal cords, the rebellion actually succeeds.
It's a stunning reversal.
Ludwig outmaneuvers the shadow magic. He slides on his disco ice, physically leverages the witch, and throws the toxic manager over the red line.
Ludwig the pink penguin is crowned the new metal co-host.
The CEO seat is secured. The nightmare is over.
Well, the physical battle is over.
Wait, what do you mean?
The psychological war, as revealed in Ludwig's victory speech, is far more complex.
Ah, right. I want you listening to really put yourself in this moment. Ludwig has just survived the most grueling match of his career.
He defeated the entity that paralyzed the entire locker room.
Confetti should be falling. The disco lights should be spinning. He has the microphone. He should be giving the ultimate babyface hero speech.
But instead of celebrating, Ludwig's demeanor instantly shifts.
It's so jarring.
He issues a hyper-specific, deeply aggressive warning directly to the witch.
Read the quote for us.
I will read the exact quote from the transcript. Ludwig looks into the camera and says, "Do not pick me up during this match. If you don't pick me up, done. I'm to avenge you. Do not think about cashing in on me during this match."
He is talking about the treasure hunter.
Exactly.
Because the witch made the final 2, the witch is guaranteed the treasure hunter briefcase. The witch has the hostile takeover contract.
Ludwig immediately recognizes that his victory is conditional.
Wow.
He demands respect, but his words are laced with a preemptive threat regarding the witch's new pathway to power.
But I look at this and I see a deeply broken protagonist.
Really?
I think Ludwig lost the mental war. He just won the biggest prize in the company, and he cannot even enjoy it for 30 seconds.
He is hyper-focused on the threat.
His brain immediately bypasses the victory and locks on to a paranoid fixation on the witch's inevitable revenge. He is obsessing over the briefcase. Did the toxic environment finally break the pink penguin?
It is an incredibly poignant observation. Ludwig's joy, the disco ice, the flair, it has been compromised by the reality of governance.
The system broke him.
The system of fight wrestling has fundamentally altered his pure energy. He realizes that in this ecosystem, wearing the crown doesn't mean you are safe, it just means you are the primary target.
Right.
His paranoia is an evolutionary survival mechanism. It proves that the locker room politics have infected him. He defeated the toxic manager, but he had to adopt the toxic manager's hypervigilance to survive the aftermath.
What a heavy, brilliant realization. So what does this massive 9,000-word puzzle of transcripts actually reveal to us?
That's the big question.
We started this deep dive looking at a completely unhinged weekend on a mattress ring in the spring 2732 season. We watched Wendy the barista weaponize her unassuming facade to strangle Nightmare and seize operational control.
We analyzed Mouse's devastating 30-second elimination and the tragedy of horizontal hostility.
And we witnessed a locker room successfully defend its soul when Ludwig the Pink Penguin threw the witch into the abyss to claim the co-host crown.
But the grand unifying theory that connects all of these disparate events lies in the structural design of the promotion itself.
Unpack that for us.
The ecosystem of fight wrestling is ruthlessly, intentionally designed to create perpetual conflict.
It is the golden parachute mechanism.
Precisely. The elimination treasure hunter mechanism ensures that narrative resolution is impossible.
Wow.
The system institutionalizes revenge. Losers like the Witch, and even Nightmare, who lost the admin finals but somehow qualified for a treasure hunter contract as well, they are never truly banished from the boardroom.
They're just lurking.
They are merely shifted to a different tactical vector. The governing body of this promotion provides a sanctioned, legally binding backdoor to power for the very villains the heroes just exhausted their entire physical and emotional capacity to defeat.
The cycle is a flat circle. Wendy controls the operations, Ludwig directs the narrative, but the shadows are already congregating in the corners of the room, holding their contracts, waiting for a moment of weakness.
It never really ends.
Which leaves me with a final provocative thought for you, our listener, to take with you today.
And it is a dynamic that extends far beyond the plush ring.
Exactly. Think about the most competitive, high-stakes environments in your own life. It could be your corporate office, a cutthroat academic program, or even the complex political dynamics of a large friend group.
We all have those environments.
When you finally manage to defeat the witch in your life, that toxic variable, that manipulative manager, that person who thrives on creating backstage paranoia, does that victory actually cure the systemic disease of the environment?
Or does the system itself require a villain?
Exactly. Does the hierarchy simply force that toxic element to find a new backdoor to power, a new treasure hunter mechanism to come at you from a blind spot?
It's a terrifying thought.
And when that inevitable hostile takeover attempt occurs, will the joyful pink penguins of the world be too consumed by paranoia to remember how to slide on the ice, or will they be ready for the rematch?
A phenomenal question that challenges the very nature of institutional victory. I don't know if this next week is happening or not.
Wow.
That is a direct quote. Caught on a hot mic, spoken by a completely exasperated host who is standing in the middle of just, well, a shattered television set.
Literally shattered.
Literally, surrounded by screaming adults while the production crew is just scrambling over their headsets trying to figure out if they need to call security or, cut the feed entirely.
Right.
And you, the listener, you handed us the audio logs and the backstage transcripts to one of the most, frankly, chaotic corners of the internet right now. And what we found when we started unpacking this, it isn't just a backstage brawl.
No, not at all.
It is a complete, systemic, psychological meltdown caught on tape.
It really is. I mean, looking through the massive stack of materials you provided for this deep dive, we're looking at the interconnected universe of fight wrestling and its post-show recap, Speak the Show.
Right.
But the mission you've given us today, it goes way beyond just narrating a fight. You want to understand the actual architecture of the chaos.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, how does a production that starts as a heavily structured, professional competition just devolve into this deeply personal, profoundly toxic physical animosity?
And specifically, we are going to tear down the walls on the absolute explosive rivalry that brought this entire production to its knees. I'm talking about the feud between Mouse and Panda.
Oh, yeah. The big one.
It is endlessly fascinating to me to watch the exact moment the stress of a reality competition breaches the hull, so to speak, of professional conduct. You watch these people literally snap, and the game they are playing just, it bleeds out into their actual lives.
Well, the boundary between the performance and reality completely dissolves. If you look closely at the timelines and the frantic crew logs you provided, this isn't just a story about two guys who couldn't get along.
Right.
It is a real-time psychological case study. It's a masterclass in what happens when the primal fear of elimination completely overrides a human being's capacity for emotional regulation. Yeah.
Well, let me stop you right there. Because before we can really understand the psychology of this backstage meltdown, we have to understand the environment that forged it, right?
Absolutely. The context is everything.
For you listening, if you want to wrap your head around why a simple argument turned into a production-ending fistfight, we have to walk through the physical and mechanical reality of fight wrestling. It is the ultimate pressure cooker.
Exactly. We need to look at the structural design of their flagship event, which is a massive 20-person battle royale.
20 people?
Yeah, 20. And this isn't just a casual exhibition match. The environment is heavily engineered to induce panic.
Right, let's talk about the stakes first, because 20 people in one space sounds less like a strategic competition and more like a riot.
It basically is a riot.
And the prize they are fighting for is incredibly specific. It's not a cash prize, right? And it's not a plastic trophy.
No.
The ultimate last person standing wins a permanent co-host position on the Bren's network. It is a career-defining, salaried, permanent position of power.
And the mechanics of how you actually secure that power are deceptively simple but incredibly punishing.
Oh, yeah.
The physical space is a ring, but the transcripts describe it uniquely. It's sometimes set up as a giant bed or a bedroom arena.
Which is just bizarre to visualize, but
Okay. It's a contained, incredibly claustrophobic space. And the primary rule is absolute. If you are physically thrown out of that ring, or if you are pushed past a designated red line on the floor, your game is over.
Just like that.
You are eliminated instantaneously.
But wait, looking at the rule set here, it isn't just a simple winner-takes-all scenario right from the opening bell, is it?
No, not exactly.
The game design feels almost predatory because it layers the rewards to maximize the paranoia among the cast.
It is deeply stratified. While the absolute last person standing gets that immediate co-host job, the game also rewards the top 5 survivors.
Okay.
If you can just outlast 15 other people, if you can survive the initial bloodbath, basically you advance to a secondary mechanic called the Elimination Treasure Hunter.
Okay, I need to pause on that because the terminology in this universe is just wild.
That is a lot, yeah.
Explain the Elimination Treasure Hunter to me mechanically. Like, how does that actually work in the context of the game?
Think of it as a deferred advantage system, almost like a bounty board.
Okay.
If you make it into the top 5, you earn the right to participate in future, highly specific elimination matches where you hunt for specific perks, advantages, or even direct challenges to the sitting co-host.
Oh, I see.
It guarantees you screen time, it guarantees you relevance, and it keeps you in the broader narrative ecosystem of the show. If you don't make the top 5, you are essentially exiled to the background.
So it's extreme scarcity. It's like a corporate environment where management brings 20 people into a boardroom and says, only one of you is getting the executive VP role.
Right.
4 of you will get to keep your jobs and fight for scraps later, and the other 15 of you are fired immediately.
That is a perfect analogy. And to compound that extreme scarcity, you have parallel matches happening in the exact same ecosystem that operate on the same brutal logic.
Right, right.
For instance, the Metal Admin title match.
Oh, the Wendy versus Nightmare match. I read the play-by-play on that, and it was savage.
Brutal.
But again, what actually is a Metal Admin? It sounds like an IT certification, not a wrestling title.
I know it sounds super technical.
Yeah.
But in the context of this show, the Metal Admin title functions as a VIP executive privilege masked as a wrestling belt.
Oh, okay.
It grants the holder administrative control over certain match types or stipulations in the future. It's another permanent titled position of power. And the way Wendy secured it against Nightmare was through a grueling, no disqualification match that literally ended in a tap-out.
Wow. So everywhere you look backstage, you have a cast of characters who have been told that their entire self-worth, their screen time, and their literal career trajectory depend on physically dominating their peers.
Yes.
It is an environment defined entirely by zero-sum survival.
And when survival is the only metric of success, paranoia becomes your default setting. Trust becomes a massive liability.
Absolutely.
Every single interaction you have with another human being in that building becomes transactional and deeply defensive. The fear of elimination fundamentally dictates the shifting alliances among the cast.
Which brings us to Ludwig.
Yes, Ludwig.
Because Ludwig is the guy who actually wins this 20-person battle royale. He survives the riot, he gets the ultimate co-host spot. And the way he handles that victory tells you everything you need to know about the toxicity of this game.
Ludwig's reaction to winning is chillingly calculated. He doesn't take a moment to celebrate the athletic achievement.
No.
He doesn't show relief or good sportsmanship. The very first thing he does, the moment he has a live microphone and the authority of the co-host title, is weaponize his new status.
He immediately forms a cartel.
Exactly.
He grabs Pink, Penguin, and Morton, aligns with them on the spot, and issues a literal decree targeting another contestant, Witch. He looks directly at the camera and tells Witch, no more cashing in.
We should probably define that for the listener, too. Cashing in is a mechanic where a contestant holding a specific advantage can spontaneously challenge the title holder.
Like a surprise attack.
Right. So by saying no more cashing in, Ludwig is attempting to unilaterally rewrite the rules of the show to protect himself. He explicitly threatens that if Witch even tries to challenge him, the new alliance of Ludwig, Penguin, and Morton will systematically destroy him.
He effectively bans Witch from the elimination treasure hunter ecosystem. It is such a pure Machiavellian villain move.
It really is.
But looking at this from the outside, I have to ask, is the game designed to make them act like tyrannical warlords, or are these just incredibly volatile, awful personalities who happen to be drawn to the spotlight?
It is inherently a symbiotic relationship. A show like Fight Wrestling actively screens and selects for massive, fragile egos during the casting process.
Of course.
They want people who desperately need the spotlight. And then the structure of the game systematically threatens those egos by placing them in an arena of artificial scarcity.
It's a powder keg by design.
Exactly. Ludwig is a prime example of someone who uses the fear of elimination offensively. He survived the trauma of the ring, so his immediate psychological response is to build a coalition to suppress his rivals, so he never has to feel that vulnerability again.
Yeah.
He is playing an aggressive political game.
But the thing about political games is that they require a certain cold, calculated grace. You have to be able to scheme.
Right.
And not everyone in this cast has Ludwig's capacity for cold calculation. While some people use the crushing pressure of the game to build strategic alliances, others just completely buckle under the weight of it.
They just break.
The pressure literally shatters them. Which brings us to the absolute catalyst of the entire production's breakdown, the most volatile participant of the night. Mouse.
Mouse's trajectory during this specific event is the linchpin of the entire conflict you asked us to analyze. If we want to understand the brawl with Panda, we have to understand the exact nature of Mouse's elimination.
Let's paint the picture for the listener, because the contrast is stunning. The build-up to this battle royale is massive. You have 20 competitors in the back. There is endless trash talk, pyrotechnics. The crowd is screaming.
The energy is through the roof.
The bell rings. It is absolute pandemonium. Bodies are flying everywhere. And Mouse, who has built himself up as a serious contender, is unceremoniously, brutally eliminated within the first 30 to 60 seconds of the match.
It is a shocking exit. 30 seconds.
Barely even a minute.
In the context of a long-form endurance match, that isn't just a loss. It is an erasure.
And if you look at the transcripts, the contrast and how the eliminated contestants react versus those who are still actively competing is incredible. You have active competitors, people like Witch, Ludwig, the alien, and the clowns, who are literally fighting for their lives through this sea of limbs.
Right, they're fully engaged.
They are bleeding, they are sweating, they are completely locked into the survival mechanics of the game.
But Mouse, standing on the outside of the red line after a mere 30 seconds, is frozen. He is entirely consumed by his early loss. He is completely unable to process the immediate, crushing reality of his failure.
I want to dig into that inability to process, because in a normal, healthy sporting event, the loser fades into the background. You lose a tennis match, you pack your racket into your bag, you hit the showers, you regroup for the next tournament.
Sure, that's what a healthy competitor does.
But instead of fading out, Mouse decides to make himself the main character of the backstage drama. Why?
We have to look at the psychological weight of how he lost. I like to think of a contestant's ego in this environment as a deep-sea submarine.
Oh, I like that.
It is built to withstand an immense amount of external pressure. The cameras, the fans, the physical toll. But Mouse didn't just slowly descend. His hull was breached instantly. The suddenness of a 30-second elimination caused a catastrophic implosion of his self-image.
It's like training for the Olympics for 4 solid years. Hyping up your entire hometown, you step up to the starting line for the 100-meter dash, the starting pistol goes off, and on your very first stride, you trip over your own shoelaces and faceplant into the track while millions of people watch in high definition.
And the human brain simply cannot tolerate that level of sudden, acute humiliation. In psychology, we refer to this as a severe narcissistic injury.
Narcissistic injury.
Yes. The cognitive dissonance between Mouse's internal self-image, which is that of a powerful, capable top contender, and the objective external reality of a pathetic 30-second exit is too vast for his brain to bridge.
So his brain basically short circuits. He can't accept that he failed. He can't say, I messed up my footwork or I wasn't ready.
No, that would require self-reflection.
Right. He desperately needs a reason that isn't him. He needs a scapegoat to externalize the failure.
Precisely. His bruised ego couldn't handle the agonizing silence of being eliminated. The stress of the competition didn't dissipate when he crossed the red line. The adrenaline was still flooding his system, but it had nowhere to go.
It was just trapped.
So it morphed instantly into defensive hostility. He needed to find someone to blame to restore his shattered sense of self.
And that psychological implosion leads us directly into the backstage hallways. You asked us to map out a timeline of this escalation, and looking at the crew logs and the hot mics, we can trace exactly how a bruised ego mutated into a physical brawl that derailed a broadcast.
Step by step.
Let's walk through the sequence of names.
It begins with the stalking phase. Picture the claustrophobic backstage area. It's dark, it's cramped, there are cables everywhere, monitors flickering with the live feed of the match that Mouse is no longer a part of.
Yeah.
Mouse is pacing this area like a caged animal. He is absolutely furious.
The crew logs note that people are trying to talk to him, maybe get a camera on him for a post-elimination reaction shot, and he is just stonewalling them.
Completely unresponsive.
He is completely shut down to reason. He is a live wire desperately searching for a ground. And then he locks onto a target. He spots Doll.
This is a critical interaction. Event number 2 on our timeline. Mouse marches up to Doll and immediately demands answers.
Right.
He doesn't ask a question. He throws an accusation. He aggressively accuses Doll of being the one who pushed him into another competitor, referred to in the logs as the monkey, which Mouse claims is the sole reason for his immediate elimination.
Wait, who or what is the monkey? Is that a prop or another wrestler?
It's likely a derogatory nickname for another contestant or a reference to a specific chaotic cluster of bodies in the ring. The key takeaway is that Mouse has constructed a narrative where Doll's specific physical action forced him into an unwinnable collision.
Got it.
It's a conspiracy theory crafted in real time to excuse his failure.
So he corners Doll with this aggressive conspiracy theory, and Doll's reaction is fascinating because Doll does not play into the emotional reality Mouse is trying to create. Doll is remarkably cold.
From a conflict de-escalation standpoint, Doll does exactly the opposite of what you're supposed to do with an erratic, angry person.
Oh, totally.
Doll doesn't apologize, doesn't validate Mouse's feelings, and doesn't offer any empathy. Doll is entirely dismissive, bluntly stating that they were just playing the game. Doll looks right at Mouse and says, "I'm just going to eliminate you," and tells him to go away.
I mean, that is objectively the worst possible thing you can say to a guy whose ego is currently lying in a million jagged pieces on the floor.
It's throwing gasoline on the fire.
But I get it. Doll is operating purely on game theory logic. Doll is essentially saying, we are in a battle royale. The fundamental mechanic of the game is to throw people out. I didn't do this to you personally. I did this because that is the literal definition of the sport we are participating in.
Exactly. Doll justifies their role perfectly logically. But Mouse is no longer operating on logic. He is operating on a purely emotional, reptilian brain level.
He's not hearing logic.
Not at all. When Doll stonewalls him with cold, hard logic, Mouse is denied the conflict he desperately needs to burn off his adrenaline. He is boiling over, he has nowhere to put his rage, and then Panda walks into the hallway.
And this is where it turns tragic. Panda walks into this incredibly tense, suffocating backstage scene, completely oblivious to the fact that Mouse is about to detonate.
Totally unaware.
And Panda does something completely, utterly normal. He just asks his coworker what happened. The transcript says Panda literally just asks, "Just tell me what happened, dude."
It is the ultimate innocent question delivered at the absolute worst possible microsecond.
But why does Mouse snap at that? What happened is an invitation to talk. Why does Mouse instantly turn all of that displaced aggression onto Panda, screaming at him to get away?
Because the question, what happened, requires Mouse to articulate his failure. It forces him to look at the reality of the 30-second elimination. Mouse is already at an absolute boiling point from the elimination, and then the stark emotional rejection from Doll. He cannot attack Doll because Doll refused to engage. So when Panda offers an emotional opening, Mouse pours all of his toxic, displaced rage right into it.
It's like, imagine a historical proxy war. Two superpowers can't directly fight each other because of mutually assured destruction, so they fund a war in a completely neutral third country that just happens to be on the map.
That's a great way to put it.
Mouse couldn't fight the game itself, he couldn't fight Doll's logic, so he waged war on Panda.
That is exactly what happened, and that triggers the rapid escalation. Panda is completely taken back. From Panda's perspective, he was merely checking on a friend who looked distressed.
Yeah, he was trying to be nice.
Panda's feelings are genuinely hurt by this unprovoked hostility. And because Panda feels unjustly attacked, his own fight-or-flight response kicks in. He gets defensive.
And the argument completely devolves. If you read the transcripts, all logic vanishes from the room. It regresses into pure juvenile name-calling. Mouse starts calling Panda a stupid pig and a stupid panda.
That specific regression to childlike insults is deeply revealing. It shows just how far Mouse's mental state has deteriorated.
He's acting like a toddler.
Exactly. He has lost the ability to articulate complex thought. He is lashing out with the most basic, venomous descriptors he can find.
And verbal abuse at that volume in a cramped hallway inevitably crosses a threshold. The situation erupts. The crew logs note that Mouse initiates a physical attack, and Panda, feeling cornered and disrespected, fights back.
And suddenly you have a full-blown physical altercation with producers and crew members desperately trying to pull them apart.
It's a total mess.
And what we really need to evaluate here is the ripple effect of this violence. This fight did not happen in a vacuum. It happened in the nerve center of a massive television production. The collateral damage extended far beyond Mouse and Panda, fundamentally altering the environment for everyone else.
Right, which brings us to the bystanders, the neutral zone. Because while these two are literally tearing the backstage area apart, knocking over monitors and screaming at each other, there are other people just trying to do their jobs.
People who have nothing to do with this feud.
Exactly. I want you listening to imagine that you just got hired for your dream job. You walk in on day one, eager to prove yourself, and two of your veteran coworkers are literally throwing punches in the break room while HR frantically tries to separate them.
That is the exact psychological reality the new participants are dealing with. If we look at the specific examples in the transcripts, the alien and the clowns provide a fascinating contrast to the veterans.
The alien's perspective in the logs is almost heartbreaking. The alien is a brand new guest. He's outside the established memberships or cliques of the veteran cast.
He's totally fresh.
He just signed his contract. He is recorded saying how excited he is to debut on the Speak the Show podcast segment. He has this pure, unjaded enthusiasm. He is just happy to be there, and suddenly he is thrust into this toxic war zone, watching his new peers try to tear each other's heads off.
It creates a massive cognitive dissonance for the new talent. And then you have the clowns, the Sun Clown and Moon Clown. Their presence in this specific environment is sociologically fascinating.
Oh, I want to dive deep into the clowns because their entire gimmick, their professional identity, is built entirely around extreme radical positivity. They aren't aggressive brawlers. They are building this collaborative future clown persona.
If you analyze their lyrics and their scripted dialogue, it is a profound thematic contrast to the grim reality of fight wrestling. Their mantras are about making day out of letdown and turning every little breakdown into something we can laugh about.
That's incredibly poignant given the setting.
It is. They wear the mask of the clown, which historically represents the tragic comedy of masking pain with joy to entertain the audience.
And what's incredible is how they actually walk the walk when the pressure is on. During that exact same battle royale, where Mouse had his 30-second meltdown, Moon Clown was also eliminated. Moon Clown was actually thrown out of the ring by Witch.
But look at the difference in response. Moon Clown does not throw a temper tantrum. Moon Clown does not stalk the halls looking for Witch to start a fistfight. Moon Clown accepts the loss within the parameters of the game.
Precisely. The clowns attempt to maintain a professional, positive energy despite the chaos. They actively support each other.
Yeah.
You have logs of Sun Clown sitting on the post-show set, surrounded by this palpable tension, just trying to be a good guest.
Right.
He's answering questions politely, maintaining the gimmick, trying to talk about the resilience of the future clown project.
We really need to contrast the clown's professionalism with Ludwig's behavior. We discussed Ludwig earlier, but it is such a stark dichotomy.
Oh, completely night and day.
Ludwig wins the match, gets the co-host job, and immediately uses his power to build a toxic cartel to bully and threaten Witch. The clowns lose the match, but they use their platform to talk about resilience and entertaining their fans.
But here is the tragedy of the situation. It doesn't matter how professional the clowns are because the toxicity of Mouse and Panda bleeds on to everyone. This raises a massive point about the emotional strain placed on these neutral bystanders.
It's unavoidable.
When you have a workplace where one guy is initiating physical violence and another guy is initiating systemic bullying, the environment becomes completely unstable.
The neutral players are forced to walk on eggshells constantly. It fundamentally alters the backstage relationships. You can hear it in the cadence of the new guests when they speak in the transcripts. They are hesitant. They are hypervigilant.
Right. Sun Clown is sitting there trying to promote an album, but you know his cortisol levels are through the roof because he is fully aware that at any moment, a 200-pound man might come crashing through the interview set.
The fear of being dragged into Mouse's path of destruction is a palpable weight on the entire cast. And from an organizational standpoint, this drains the group's productivity entirely.
Oh, for sure.
When your mental energy is spent navigating a coworker's volatile, unpredictable temper, you have significantly less cognitive bandwidth to devote to the actual performance of your job.
It is the definition of a toxic workplace. And the thing about toxic workplaces is that eventually you can't hide the rot from the customers. A backstage fight gets so loud and so out of control that it can no longer be contained behind the curtain. It bleeds out into the broadcast.
This brings us to the climax of the timeline you asked us to sequence. The exact, critical point where the backstage aggression irreparably ruins the main stage segment.
So let's set the scene for the final confrontation. The production crew is trying to shoot Speak the Show, which is the post-event recap show. They have a stage set up, they cut to a commercial break. In a normal television production, a commercial break is a moment to breathe. The camera operators reset their angles, makeup artists rush in with powder, the host drinks some water. It is a structured reset.
But because the production failed to contain Mouse earlier, this commercial break becomes the stage for the final implosion. Mouse marches out onto the main stage area while the cameras are technically off, but the microphones are still hot.
Which is how we got the audio.
Exactly. He is trying to forcefully claim the segment as his own.
He is literally shouting, "This is my segment." It is a desperate, pathetic attempt to reassert control over his narrative. He lost control of his body in the ring. He lost control of his emotions in the hallway. So now he's trying to hijack the actual real estate of the television show.
But Panda, who has been completely alienated, humiliated, and enraged by Mouse's earlier disrespect, is not going to allow Mouse to control the narrative. Panda intrudes right onto the stage to confront him directly under the lights.
And the breakdown of professional conduct is immediate, total, and horrifying. The argument flares up instantly, and this time it draws everyone in. You have Giraffe, another contestant, who was just trying to do the recap show, desperately trying to physically separate them before the cameras roll again.
Giraffe's dialogue here is incredibly telling regarding the exhaustion of the bystanders. Giraffe is yelling, "Leave me alone, don't separate with me, I'm done."
If you analyze the broken syntax of that sentence, "don't separate with me," it shows sheer, absolute panic.
He's completely overwhelmed.
Giraffe is so exhausted and overwhelmed by the violence that he can't even form a coherent sentence. He just wants out of the crossfire.
And then you have Pika. The logs specifically note that Pika is literally pissed off by the disruption. Pika was also eliminated in the Battle Royale, but unlike Mouse, Pika is furious that the actual production of the recap show is being ruined.
Because Pika wants to work.
Right. Pika is trying to be a professional broadcaster, and Mouse and Panda are treating the set like a barroom parking lot.
It is a complete hijacking of the network's resources, because this conflict directly causes the total breakdown of group communications. You listen to the crew channels, and it is sheer panic.
Total chaos.
The production crew, specifically a producer named Javi, is left scrambling over the comms. Javi represents the blue-collar reality of the crew versus the prima donna cast. Javi is trying to figure out who started yelling first, trying to figure out if they need to cut the live feed, trying to figure out how to salvage millions of dollars of broadcast time.
And that leads us back to the quote you opened the show with. The host of the segment is left standing at the desk, completely exasperated, realizing that the structure of the show has collapsed.
I don't know if this next week is happening or not. It's such a dark realization.
It really is.
The host isn't just complaining about a bad segment. The host is acknowledging that the drama has escalated from a personal, petty dispute to a literal existential threat to the show itself. If the cast cannot be in the same room without throwing punches, there is no show.
The hostility has entirely eroded the boundary between the game and reality. And if we synthesize what happened here, if we look at the core factors that led to this systemic breakdown, they are very clear.
Let's lay them out.
First, you have an environment designed by the network that utilizes extreme scarcity, only one permanent winner, brutal physical eliminations, and severe public consequences to artificially manufacture stress.
Yeah.
Second, you have a participant in Mouse who suffered a sudden severe narcissistic injury on camera and entirely lacked the emotional tools to process that humiliation gracefully.
He was a powder keg.
Exactly. He was ready to blow. And third, you have a complete negligent lack of early intervention by the production team. When the backstage stalking began, when Mouse cornered Doll, production should have stepped in. They didn't.
They let the powder keg sit next to the open flame, probably hoping it would make for dramatic reality TV footage, and instead it blew the entire studio apart.
When you don't contain initial displaced aggression, when Doll dismisses Mouse with cold logic, and Panda wanders in, unaware, it creates an unstoppable chain reaction.
It's physics at that point.
The unmediated backstage interactions directly dictate the on-camera hostilities. You simply cannot expect human beings to physically fight each other in a concrete hallway and then sit down to record an articulate professional segment 5 minutes later.
It is biologically impossible. Their adrenaline is still maxed out. And you see the permanence of this damage in Panda's reaction on the stage. Panda doesn't just yell back. Panda actively promises revenge.
Oh, the threat.
Panda looks at Mouse and says, "I will see you next week." And then maybe this podcast right here. Panda is actively bringing the backstage grievance permanently into the on-camera narrative.
The narrative shift is total and complete at that moment. The original premise of the show winning the Fight Wrestling co-host spot has been entirely eclipsed.
It doesn't even matter anymore.
For Mouse and Panda, the competition no longer exists. It is entirely about personal, retaliatory animosity.
Okay, let's bring all of this together for you listening, because we have tracked this from the opening bell of the Battle Royale to the final show-stopping confrontation on the set. What we have untangled here today is a profoundly fascinating study on the fragility of group dynamics.
We started by analyzing how the brutal mechanics of a competition and the terrifying existential fear of elimination transform human behavior.
Right.
It dictates shifting alliances, as we saw with Ludwig building a predatory cartel the second he gained power, and it breeds immense, suffocating paranoia.
We saw exactly how unchecked egos handle sudden public failure. Mouse's incredibly early 30-second elimination was the catalyst, turning a professional athletic loss into a deeply personal, toxic crusade to save his own face.
Couldn't accept his own failure.
Exactly. He couldn't fight Doll's cold logic, so he turned an innocent coworker into a punching bag.
We mapped the extensive collateral damage, too. We saw how this unchecked toxicity alienated positive bystanders like the clowns and enthusiastic newcomers like the alien.
It ruined the experience for them.
It created an environment of fear that ruined group morale and plummeted productivity.
And ultimately, we saw how that backstage aggression couldn't be contained, spilling out onto the main stage, hijacking a commercial break, and literally threatening the survival of the network's programming.
It's the ultimate cautionary tale.
It is a perfect, terrifying example of how emotional intelligence, or the complete lack of it, dictates the success or failure of a high-pressure environment. Whether you are fighting for a promotion in a corporate boardroom, sweating on the line in a commercial kitchen, or standing in a professional wrestling ring, if you cannot regulate your own ego in the face of failure, you will eventually burn the whole building down around you.
The mechanics of conflict, escalation, and displaced aggression remain exactly the same. no matter the venue.
Which leaves us with one final kind of provocative thought for you to mull over as we wrap up this deep dive into the archives. We have spent all this time analyzing Mouse's fragile ego, Panda's defensive reactions, and Ludwig's Machiavellian bullying. But take a step back and think about the invisible hand guiding all of this. If a competition is structurally, deliberately designed by a massive network to push its participants to their absolute emotional and physical breaking points.
Using scarcity and fear.
Right, purposely using scarcity, claustrophobia, and public humiliation as a recipe for our entertainment, at what point does the production itself become morally responsible for the physical violence that inevitably breaks out?
That is the real question.
Are Mouse and Panda really to blame for snapping? Or are they simply fulfilling the exact psychological destiny that the show built for them?